All right, Wolfpack, welcome back to another episode of the Adaptive Alphas podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, share this podcast with anyone you think may resonate. Remember, our goal this year is to become the #1 men's development podcast in the world. And you know what? Our guest here today is Justin, and you're going to recognize him from Wellness Wednesdays. He's helping in that goal of becoming the #1 podcast. So Justin Sloan, thank you so much for coming on today.
Always appreciated.
We got you as the host for Wellness Wednesdays. What are your thoughts so far on that?
It's awesome. I actually like it because it gives me a little more drive to research a wider variety of things. Instead, sometimes we get stuck in our own little path. Fun to see these multiple puzzle boxes. And I'm like, well, what does everybody else need? And what can they utilize? It's kind of like the same thing as like coaching martial arts or something like that. There are things that you didn't realize you were rusty on until you practice the motions again.
One of the things that I know that we've been working on is creating a template that maximizes that like 2, 3, 4, 5-minute segment, right? Because we're trying to cram all of the knowledge, all of the books, all of the information, all of the practices and experiences that we have and package it in a way that the audience can assimilate and then implementate the next day. It's been fun. And for anybody listening to this that doesn't know what we're talking about, go tune in to any Wellness Wednesday. You can go to the podcast Adaptive Alphas, and then you'll see a separate green colored branding. And it's Wellness Wednesdays in 3 to 5 minute segments generally. We're just getting started. Because the show aspect, I think one of the things that separates us from the average podcast is that we are video first, and I really want to increase production value as well. With that, I did look back at the last podcast that we had, and I wanted to do a better job of interviewing you. To give some, early context to the people that are tuning in who are recognizing you more and more being integrated into the Adaptive Alphas brand, what do you want to share that made you you?
How far back would you like me to go?
Nope, that's it for you. That's for you to.
Well, there was just
decide.
No, I'm just kidding. Here's
well,
the
you see, there's when a man meets a woman.
There was a drunken night once. But for me, I did have a rough upbringing. It was not picture perfect by any means. Going through childhood, I didn't know my real dad, I guess you could say at first. I had my stepdad, but that was an interesting thing right from the get-go. So at age 5, I tell this guy that's with my uncle, like, hey, you're not my dad. And he's like, actually, funny thing is, I am your real dad.
Oh,
like,
shoot.
So from right
from
5? Yeah, right from
Wow.
the get-go, my stepdad, they were planning on telling me when I was like, a little older, so I can understand it. So like, that's like, well, while we're talking about this, first memory that pops up, starting with a rough upbringing. I have been surrounded by toxic masculinity my whole life. And it's not necessarily toxic. That's just a quote unquote thing. What I mean by that is it's immature men that didn't understand that you don't have to be angry at everything. There was no vulnerability. I didn't grow up. My mom hugged me a lot, but my dad was always gone for work. And he didn't really care for his job very much. So he would come home. He'd be kind of angry. So the beginning was just, it felt like a lot of chaos. There was love. My parents did the best that they could of raising me. I had brothers that were already in their 30s. So my nephews are older than, I had nephews and nieces that were older than me. And so my brothers and everybody were, you could say, heavily affiliated with biker gangs. So growing up, that's what I seen a lot of, was a lot of this chaotic modern day barbarian style masculine vibe. So structuring,
and that was attractive to you growing up, right? Like from what, as a teenager, adolescence to young adulthood, you were involved in that stuff as well, right?
Yeah. So growing up in that atmosphere, I grew up fighting a lot. So in elementary school, middle school, stuff like that, I was usually one of the minority in California. So there was a lot of fighting going on. There was a lot of bullying and getting picked on. And one of the ways that I had to understand these things was through defending myself. But instead of just defending myself, I started to become the bully, or because I see that from my older brothers. There was a lot of fighting. And so when I seen that, I was like, oh, this is what it is to be a man. This is what it is to be a man. They would be drinking all the time. They'd be doing all these things. My dad didn't really drink much, or my mom. But yeah, so seeing those things, that's what I thought it was always to be a man, was kind of like that. I wouldn't even call it an anti-hero. I almost thought that like a villain was what it was, like there was a lot of deceit and lying and stuff like that from some of my brothers. I remember from a young age, I was embarrassed that I'd never gone to juvenile hall or gone to prison.
Because that was a badge of honor for
Yeah,
the
that was a
people
badge
around
of
you.
honor because those are the stories I always heard from a young age was fighting or womanizing or doing all these weird things that most people nowadays I realize aren't. It's not a badge of honor in the least bit.
You're talking about different socioeconomic classes, right? So if you're middle class, upper class, you have no idea this world exists. If
Yeah,
you're lower class, lower income, you grow up in the hood, then Scarface is the epitome of success. Then dying by the bullet is the greatest sacrifice you could make for your crew, your gang, your affiliation, or whatever it is, right? Your other brothers. So that world still exists today. And one of the things that I'm fascinated by is like how you can frame that as success, because that's what success would be in that world, right?
yeah.
And so where for you, when did the change of frame happen? When did it start happening? Was there a moment for you? Was there something that happened that was like, oh shit, no, this is real.
Yeah, so
Prison or death is actually my
yes,
future.
starting as rough childhood, I have all this anger and bent up aggression and stuff like that. I don't have that great of communication with my parents and everybody, so I'm looking for outside sources for this. And I do find certain friend groups, but a lot of those friend groups don't necessarily have a father that's functional too. So yeah, we bound together. We end up fighting a lot and doing these things, but in these processes of being around these situations, I thought I was just a pussy because I would
Mm,
fight, but sometimes something would tell me not to show up that day.
right,
But it was my intuition.
right.
And my intuition has always been there. And so for me, it took me a long time. It's been a battle. Like my ego was like, no, you're just intimidated. You're scared. You're being bullied again. And it wasn't that I realize it takes me time to look at that now, but I've always been on this path and I just barely miss things. Like I think I just barely dodged the car or I just barely dodged a bullet, literally. I actually had one of my cars shot with a 45 caliber and I luckily was not in the car when it happened. And the bullet went through the back seat above the driver's side seat and above the steering wheel and right through the window.
What else have you experienced? Because there's some things that you told me that I don't know if you want to share, but like you've had some pretty rough experiences.
Like I said, being younger, as a kid, getting beat up for my skin color for a long time, that was heavy too. Um, and
Which is it exists, right?
it does, it is,
It's not as known, but again, being the minority doesn't have a bias towards skin color. You can be a minority in certain contexts, depending on the zip code and the area you're in, right? And so in this context, you said you were surrounded by predominantly Latinos and Black kids, and so you were the minority
yeah,
at your school.
because my Lompoc was like a farm town, so there's a lot of first generation, immigrants, which are great, hard workers. Nothing against nobody. It has not like it wasn't even against like it isn't even necessarily like, like white versus black or this or that. It's just confused kids that hear little bits and pieces of what their family talks about and takes what they understand and puts it into their real life.
Right.
And I think a lot of that too, and that's what happens with gang culture at an early age. So from like kindergarten to fifth grade is when these kids start transitioning, and then from fifth grade to sixth, seventh grade, so we start all fighting. We fight a lot. I get made fun of for my skin color. And from elementary school, like the transition into middle school is when some of my cousins are just Hispanic or Latino, and they started transitioning into gangs. And a lot of that is because there's no one at home. Everybody's at work and they don't have those father figures to look for. So in that process, they end up joining these gangs. And for me, I was the same concept. We had these group of kids that were skateboarders, but they were really rough around the edges. Like we were super rough around the edges. We were considered another form in our town of, you had the West Siders, the South Siders. During high school, when African Americans started getting made fun of in school, they ended up having run off from LA, Crips or Blood, showing them that was a culture too. Yeah. And that's how that started in such a small farm town.
The thing that you said was really interesting, that the kids' parents were working and that's very common for first gen, second generation immigrants, right? Is we just work 24/7. It seems like even on weekends, right? We're not necessarily even saying that these kids are boys, and I'll contextualize it to boys, that they didn't have fathers. They had absent fathers, which means that if your dad is working 6 days a week, 12-hour, 14, 16-hour days, and then he comes home, he's not really present as a father figure. And so with that, absent fathers, the statistics are mind-numbing when you actually look into it. It's like something like 80% of all prisoners come from absent fathers. Something like 60% of every 70% of all runaway kids come from absent father homes. And so I think it's important to maybe touch on that topic a little bit. So what would you say, because you turned out pretty good. I turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I would say figure out who you admire most and why you admire them and start to develop maybe some of those traits, and that's what at least that's what I had to do is I looked at these people and I realized that it wasn't this angry, go get everybody barbarian mindset. I was like, well, a lot of people don't like me now because of this, so that was something that I had to struggle with. For me, it was not having my dad there. My dad was not there. And then when he got home, he was angry type of deal. So
my dad is the only man that I refer to as a superhero in real life. But that still doesn't negate the fact that he was working so much to provide for his family that he wasn't able to influence me in a lot of ways. And because of that, I fell off track a lot, right? Like I fell into these dark situations, hung around with the wrong crowd, everything, right? But as I evolved and grew and saw all of the sacrifices that he had made and the things he went through and the life he had, I started recognizing how amazing he was, right? But in the thick of things, sometimes we can have that perspective of like, I wish my dad was just more present in my life.
Yeah.
And like, poor me, right? That more victim mindset. Like, why can't my life be different versus that person's doing the best that they can with what they have and based off what they were raised.
So from a father standpoint, it's just being, like you're saying, it's being self-aware. Knowing if you only have a certain amount of time, spend that time and be like, so I see even with some of my friends that are parents, is they don't realize that they're projecting. So they're sitting, like, say you have X amount of time, but you talk to me nicely, but then when you talk to your kid, you have an annoyed voice. So you just have to be aware of what's going on. So for me, I would have felt way more comfortable with my dad if I wasn't automatically having to go into survival mode when he gets home. Say if you hate your job and it's reflecting onto your family, be mindful and pay attention to those kind of things. Maybe don't go into the substances that a lot of people do, and then try to be more, like you said, more present. So be able to know who you needed when you were a kid. And that's what I do with my nephews is I look at what I admired most about male figures when I was a kid that aren't the negative things. I'm like, man, I really enjoyed like riding on the back or the front of my dad's motorcycle, or I really enjoyed going fishing or this, that, and the other, or going to parks or people playing with me. So for me personally, what I do is I try to find the traits that I admired in adults when I was a kid, and I try to give that back plus 10 if I can, but at the same time, you can only give as much as you have. So if the dads are so burnt out, then make some time for your kids that that you can all sit down and just realize that they are not doing anything to really hurt you. So there shouldn't be any reason that you have this like ill will towards your kid. And that's something I've seen a lot growing up, and I see in some of my friends, and they don't even realize they're doing it. It's taxing to have a conversation with their kids. When they post on social media and do all these other things, they're so loving, but that's not the love that they give. So I think love should be given equally. The same way you treat or you want to be treated, the same way you have to treat your kids.
Yeah. I noticed that with parents as well. It's like,
you almost get resentful.
I'm talking to my friend right now, stop bugging me. And it's if you were to flip that energy on your friend and then give that energy to your kid, you could kind of see that contrast.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's such good advice. Now rewind back to your late teens or mid teens. How would you coach yourself through that time of your life now?
And what's wild? I actually had an ayahuasca journey where I got to do that. I got to walk back all the way through my childhood. And the reason I was able to explain it to you in the last podcast is because I sat down and I went through all of it more recently to that time. I think right now I'm like, might be compartmentalizing little bits and pieces or something.
And you did that in a sanctioned place where it's legal, right?
Yeah. The crazy thing is my nephew's in that same situation. So he is the almost identical to who I was because my family doesn't change. Now there's just more of them with the same childhood trauma. So now it's amplified. Now it's just a reverberated echo through our generation. So now they have multiple levels of that. So for me, I honestly, one of the first things I would have told myself is like, hey, dance more. Don't worry about what people are thinking of you. Don't listen to your brother. Enjoy MMA, do some things there, but know that it's okay. Like for one of the things that I had is I learned Spanish for 3 years, kindergarten to 3rd grade. But my brother said, I can't speak that. My older brother was like, hey, you're not going to talk that shit here. We're, this, that, and the other. And so for me, I was embarrassed about like being able to know Spanish a little bit, like they read to us in Spanish for every hour, stuff like that. It was like these little things of immature masculinity, this insecure thing, because they didn't know how to do it. So I wasn't able to do those things. It would be making sure that me as that little person was way more open and way more okay with being vulnerable and singing and dancing and being myself early on. Because I went through this phase of having to bottle all that up and like being able to chip away that shell and know you can fail forward and it's okay to fail. You don't get made, even if you get made fun of by your family, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's okay. All that's okay. Like you're gonna fail, because I was so worried about failing early on, and I was so angry, and I had so much resentment towards myself and everybody else, and I always thought I was not this thing because of the way my family all jokes around and makes fun of each other. So you couldn't fail, otherwise we'd torment ourselves.
That's really felt for me in the Latino culture. They do that nitpick everything, quick quips,
They
nothing.
always
You're
have the worst nicknames.
the worst nicknames. Yeah. They'll whatever your flaws. You have messed up teeth. They'll call you out messed up teeth. You're bald. They'll call you baldy. You're fat. They'll call you fatty. Like they highlight the worst parts of you and then make it this like term of endearment, but it's still loaded with negativity. Good or bad, that's my culture, and I'm better for it. So whatever.
Same. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah,
and we're here now.
And just to hit the point home even further, what you just said, I remember there was a time where I was so self-conscious about what others thought, everything, right? How I dressed, how I looked, like every little thing I was so self-conscious about. And then somebody pointed that out to me. And I don't remember when, it wasn't an exact moment, but I heard this message repeatedly. So hopefully if this is the first time you heard this is going to be that seed for you. Everybody is in their head as much as you are or were in yours. So as self-conscious as you are about yourself, that's how people are self-conscious about themselves. Like they're not going to remember you, your name, and very little things will they remember about you. So it's like you could literally go out into the mall when it's the busiest time of the day and go lay down on the floor and get uncomfortable, get out of that comfort zone and start training that idea. Like people are going to be like, that's kind of weird. And then they're going to forget about you 3 minutes later, maybe even 30 seconds later.
Another big thing too is like having the mindset of not judging other people. So then you don't always feel like you're being judged. I notice that a lot. There's more negativity out there because that's what you're projecting. That's the vibrational frequency that you have. And that's all you understand is if, oh, you're judging everybody. So you think everybody's judging you.
Yeah. So when you release that self-consciousness, that self-judgment, it generally translates into you releasing the judgment of others. It's like, oh, no, you're good, man. You just made a mistake. Get back up. Oh, you tripped up a little bit. Tie your shoelace. Like, you're good. You know what I mean?
And then if you can be that person, there are some narcissists out there, but if you can be that person that has enough confidence to just kind of go through life and enjoy whatever it is you're enjoying, other people are going to follow. Yeah. And I notice more and more people are starting to get behind those natural leaders, and you have more opportunities that you're going to be able to master and be able to actually see because you're not constantly worried about judgment or this, that, and the other. You have all your bandwidth.
The thing that kind of brought me back into that consciousness is now that I have an 11 and she's turning 12 this year, 12-year-old daughter. And in the men's world, it's not as prominent as it is in women's world. That self-judgment, that ideal, that beautiful body type, the makeup, the dress, the Louis, the Gucci, noticing those similarities that I had around her age. I'm like, oh shit, she's going through it.
Yeah, you see those things that you're like, oh, I know how to fix that this time. But then you have to even then you can only plant so many seeds and then let them grow to be their own version of an individual. Like Eckhart Tolle or Tolle, the Orange Book. One of the things that is embedded in my DNA from that book is how he talks about like you can't raise your kids behind your ego. You have to let them be themselves, but you have to like you have to have little guidelines, but you can't force them to do everything that you didn't do for the sake of them being the person that you wish you could be.
Neil Strauss says something that echoes what you're saying. He says, I want to raise my child enough to function, but not enough to unlearn everything I taught them.
Exactly.
Because everyone is so unique and everyone's experience is so nuanced. And you don't want to domesticate your child to be a follower. You want to create scaffolding around them to kind of guide them in the right direction. But eventually they're going to have a coming of age. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to develop into their own person. And that's with that rite of passage happens 11, 12, 13 years old for most boys and girls. So just to capture what you said, be authentic. You train yourself, be more authentic, and care less about what others think or are projecting on you.
Yes,
right?
Treat your
As
life
a
like
kid.
you're a video game character and you're trying to gain attributes. You know, you're getting those XP points.
Those XP points, and for those that don't play video games, that's experience points.
You're getting yeah, exactly. You're just if you can always be a student in life, then you know you're always learning, and that's just it. Sometimes you're the student. Every once in a while you'll be the leader, but you're forever learning.
Bro, that's literally, dude, I get so excited about that shit because personal development is like, that's been my central mission for so many years now. And making that analogy between like, dude, the same way you play video games, the same way you want to level up your character, the same way you want to get better, you want to get stronger, you want to get faster. Like life can be a fucking video game.
Yes, it can.
You can get better, stronger, faster, smarter, level up every aspect of your life, everything, your friend group, your peers, your businesses grow. Like that can be real life. Great frame, dude. Like Joe Rogan says, become the main character of your movie.
Become the hero of your own journey, like, and that was literally what happened to me. I was sitting there playing video games. I was, smoking weed, doing all these things, being a degenerate in my own right, and skateboarding. And like, I'm like 18, 19. I quit a good job just because I was like, responsibility was too much for me. I was playing this video game, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, I don't want to smoke weed anymore. I don't want this. Mm-hmm. Like I've spent 15 hours doing this, and in 15 hours I could become this person. Mm-hmm. And that's what brought me back to the gym, training way harder, went back to MMA. I was like, I could be this character. Like this could be real life. So I started working on becoming that person.
On that same subject, where did the wellness aspect of you come in? Because we didn't touch on that the previous episode. No. And so what age did you start getting involved in health and wellness, where you notice those differences between when you're eating a certain way, moving your body a certain way? And
even thinking now, like when you bring it up, I think it was when I was a kid. My parents, I didn't eat well growing up, but I really liked the idea of like herbs and Eastern medicine through like martial arts movies. And I've always loved magic and the whole rags to riches stories of things. And I felt, and when I seen like alchemists and different things like that in movies, that's where that started. But what hit it close to home is me becoming. I was an alcoholic, and I was we talked about in the last podcast, heavy into construction and drinking, do all these things because that's what I thought it was to be a man. I would say high school. High school is when I started figuring out, because I was lifting for the girls. My buddy, 17. Me and him would go to the YMCA. 16, I would say. I did play some sports in high school from freshman year on. I played water polo. I've skateboarded and biked my whole life. So I was always active, but I wouldn't say I was well. I was strong. Looking back at pictures, I was a lot bigger than I thought I was. Everybody was like, dude, you're a big guy. But I thought it was because of my personality. So I was so violent. So everybody, because I was the, sophomore knocking out seniors. Yep. If, not everybody, there was some big seniors, but there was a couple times when I got pushed to the limit, and that happened.
You had that record of fighting.
Yeah. You can ask most people in my hometown, and all of them will recall one fight or another. But yeah, so what it was, the biggest thing was moving to Utah. I was 22, my hero's journey. You were always looking for a rite of passage. I was stuck in my hometown, and I'm like, I don't know where this is going. And this is also tied to a psychedelic experience. But So we ended up going to EDC 2012. Never been to a rave, and that was my first one. So we have this crazy like time with some of my really close friends that I call brothers because I've grown up with them. Like my brothers were more like uncles to me. And so I'm hanging out with them and he's like, "Hey, move to Utah." And I'm like, "Okay." I end up packing up all my stuff and just getting rid of a bunch of stuff and moving out here. In that first 6 months in that house, we had another experience and I realized so the whole world ended. It was like the Matrix. Like people were plugging in, unplugging, and this wire in the back of their head, and that was the experience of them. It was almost like AI. So it was like a big coax cable. They'd plug in. Everything was like a dystopia, and they'd plug in, and we'd go to an alternate universe. So I was living multiple lives in different dimensions, and every time they unplugged, it would go back to the same spot. It was this cement building. Like you couldn't see that there's trash everywhere.
Like the Matrix, legitimately.
Legitimately, and then
Yeah.
you plug back in, but you had to basically had to pay these dealers to give you this energy that they plug in, and that everybody were just these little skinny, weathered. They almost look like gray aliens without the big heads. So like really skinny, like fragile bodies.
That's how everyone was.
Yes.
In this dystopia.
Yeah. There, at least where we were at,
Yeah.
like all the people around me were just laying up against walls.
Were you like that too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I'd plug back in and I'd go to another universe. Like I was like a police officer in like a space force. And then I'd unplug and plug back in. And I ended up in this like astral realm to where I was literally one of the fabrics of the universe where it was basically felt like I was in a solid gold guitar string, and every question I asked, I already answered myself. So I was in some, like as I didn't need to answer anything because I already knew everything. And so what happened was I'm like, what is my purpose? It shoots me out of this realm, and I'm standing in the backyard in the snow, and I'm watching the world come back. Bit by bit, everything got decimated, and it's coming back sprouts at a time. So it's coming back little sprouts at a time. And I was told, you're on your journey for wellness and health. You are one of the people that has been awakened and needs to help these people. That I
Yeah.
watched the world be
Yeah.
recreated, and it like plant by plant. And I moved out of that house. It was in Springville. And I moved up into a townhouse in Orem. I got on the paleo diet. I switched jobs. And then I started going to a gym there that's pretty big, university gym. I started meeting more and more people. And the people just started coming into my life that were better role models. That's where I met this guy named Dave. He's like a guru. He worked with special forces and all these things. He was like a Mr. Utah in 86 and 87, and just like all around a badass dude. And he's the one that helped me. He was kind of like my mentor for health. And so like it just started developing really quickly. And that's when I got into the paleo diet and CrossFit and different things like that. And I really dialed it in after that experience. And that's when I started doing like physique competitions and different things like that, just testing the waters everywhere I could. And then from paleo, and then I started researching more, and I was like, I don't feel good on this. So then that's when I got my first nutrition certification and started moving forward from there.
You have this moment that was really pivotal, this altered state of consciousness. If anybody knows you, they know how friendly and personable, and you're always making new friends and acquaintances and opening up your circle, like making connections. Where does that come from?
It came from me becoming the person that I admired. I admired happy, nice people. So going back a little tiny bit, say, like I said, I grew up around men it was immature masculinity. It was literally barbarians. I fought all the time, and that's what I thought it was to be a man. But I was losing a lot of friends because of it, because I couldn't be vulnerable with people. And so like as moving into my 20s, I realized that it wasn't me. I don't need to fight anybody. I started going away from that, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to go to jail. And I've been to juvenile hall, different, like those kind of things. And I met certain people that were like savages, like black belt jujitsu practitioners and just all around like UFC caliber or in UFC fighters and stuff like that, or special forces guys, black ops guys. And there's actually a guy that was in Utah that I knew of that was tied in with Delta Force, and they were so nice, but they're savages. And I was like, I want to be more like that. I seen Joe Rogan and stuff like people like that, and I was like, oh, I like this feeling more of being nice to people than bullying people.
Yep.
It's not me. So once I started getting away from the alcohol and I started accepting myself for who I was and not being so resentful, I realized that I just like helping people. That's like one of my favorite things. And so many people help me out with no expectations my whole life. And I just barely missed felonies and different things like that because of people like that, that accepted me for who I was and made sure that I was not they'd be able to help snap me out of those states and could see more in me. And for me, I knew that person was in there. So I just started developing the qualities necessary to emulate some of these people that I admired.
That is really cool. And one of the things also that it might be hard to it's definitely unrelatable, but the mindset that you're in those groups, it's a state of like where you're constantly in fight or flight, and then you're always worried about betrayal or somebody even from your own group,
Yeah.
like taking advantage of you or squaring up, or the idea of having in the back of your mind, is today the day I get caught up by the 50? Like,
Yeah.
it's this hyper state of stress and pressure and constantly like a lot of machismo and a lot of posturing, and it's the worst soup of emotions that you can feel. Get out of it, you're just like, dude, life is so easy.
Yeah, and you get stuck in this survival mode.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so ingrained because I've been, like I said, been shot at, I've been stabbed twice, and it's just a weird thing. Like it's not a functional mindset. You're not a growth mind. Like I
Yep.
didn't understand what the victim mindset and what poverty mindset was. And I was stuck at the bottom of both of them. I was in what I call as the petri dish, like a little petri dish of just negative. Even now, I have a hard time sometimes with self-talk. Like I don't realize I'm doing it, but it's like when you think, like if people suffer from negative self-talk, think of how you talk to yourself, and would you ever talk to other people like that? Would you want people to talk to your kids like that? Like, or whoever it is, your mom or whoever you respect the most. Like, if you don't want other people to talk about that or talk like that to someone that you love, don't talk to yourself like that.
Trevor Moawad, I have a couple of his books right here. The late Trevor Moawad, he passed away from cancer. He was a mental sports psychologist or a sports performance psychologist. Russell
Wilson?
Russell Wilson, the QB.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he worked directly one-on-one with him, and then they branched off and created a business. But in his book, they talk about a study that they were able to measure the effects of a negative when you say something out loud. I'll give you an example. If I were to sit here and I were to push this over, what somebody with negative self-talk would say is like, I'm so dumb, and that doesn't just happen overnight. You don't see people with positive self-talk being like, I'm a piece of shit. They don't say that. But when you're at a place where you say it out loud, it has the weight of 4 to 7 times more than a positive compliment. So when you say a negative statement out loud like that, it holds 4 to 7 times more weight than a positive compliment. So he talks about taking inventory, and one of the things that I implemented in culture, so when I'm building teams or I'm leading teams or I'm stepping in as CEO for an organization or a business, the first commandment is don't say stupid shit. Don't say stupid shit to other people. Don't say negative things to other people. Don't say negative things about our strategy. Don't say negative things at all. Just don't talk negative. And there's times where I was managing sales team and we were driving out to territory and I was about to drop them off. If they said something negative or came back in with a negative mindset, I would leave them there. I'd say, well, I'm going to leave your ass here on the side of the road and then I'll come pick you up later. But don't say this shit in my car, because it has such profound influence. And when you start reading books about mindset and mentality, and from the biggest, the Tony Robbins of the world, the Trevor Moads, the Justin Suas, these guys who are dealing with elite of the elite CEOs, business owners, professional athletes, you'll see how dialed in they get. And they'll really quickly see just by having a conversation with you where your mindset is. Is it more negative? Is it more positive? Is it more advocate? Like, do you advocate for yourself, or are you destructive towards yourself? Are you self-destructive? And it's powerful, dude.
It is.
It's powerful. So, and some people can hide it. Some people can be very self-deprecating and never say anything out loud. But that's where they have to have somebody very honest with them and be like, hey, man, like I've just been real hard on myself, this past week or this past month. Like, I just can't do anything right, and you're just like, hey, dude, you're human.
Yeah,
like, welcome
exactly.
to the human experience.
It's the rebound, you know, and that, like you said, even if it is like 60-40, but
Mhm.
even if it is 60-40, you just said that 40% of negativity is
Mhm.
160%
Yeah, bro, it's
efficiency on your
wild.
body.
One little cue that I give my friends or the people in my circle when they say something negative, like if you were to say something negative about yourself, I'd be like, hey, don't talk about my friend like that.
Yeah, I like
You know what
that.
I mean?
Yeah,
It's
my
just like,
girlfriend does it sometimes because I'm
exactly.
like, oh, that was dumb. And she's like, you're
Yeah.
not dumb. I can hear her. I'm like,
Yeah.
where
You're
is
like,
she?
hey, don't talk about my friend like that. And you're like, oh, dude, that's a good reminder. And we all need it every now and then. No one's perfect. And it's powerful, though. And I love that stuff. And that's another quick little intro to Mindset Mondays that's coming this week. Or let's see, today's Monday. So it'll probably be here. I think we're going to launch the first episode next Monday. And that'll be with one of the top sports performance psychologists in the country. I'm excited for that.
I'm excited too.
But
That's gonna be fun to hear. I think that's one of the biggest things is like a combination of being able to sleep better and talk to yourself better. If people can do the two of those, that like life-changing things will happen.
Yeah.
And for me too, one of the things that or one of the philosophies I like to believe in, and it helps me with purpose, is the idea that your soul knew exactly what you were going to go through in this life and signed the contract, and you came anyway. So everything that's happening is supposed to happen to make you grow as a person, and it's up to you whether or not you can find the strength and everything. So for me, that really helped me in my early 20s to hear that and be like, yeah, I like that. So I'm here for a reason, and my soul knows what the reason is, and I'm just going through life experiencing it also to kind of put those pieces together. But it kind of it gave me a little more purpose to be able to do it that way.
So for the listeners that are just going through it right now, the kids that have similar backgrounds, rough and tumble, the society would deem them as at-risk youth, or just had that really tough background, poverty, everything, right?
I was labeled as a problem child from day one. That was something that I
Yeah,
experienced.
I did too, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking you, right? So when did the reframe for you happen? How did you reframe that? It's happening to me to it's happening for me. How did that happen?
I took the mask off. I had to learn to take that mask off and put it down and realize that any day you wake up, you can be a completely different person if you try hard enough. It might take some time, but like say if no one believes in you, but you want to do this one thing, say a podcast or whatever it is, you got to learn how to have faith in yourself. Take baby steps, like even if they're little tiny micro steps in the right direction. The biggest thing is you can change. That was what helped me. It was like, I can be whoever I want to be. And it's just like knowing that you can, and so many other people have. That's one of the reasons why I like to listen to like people's prison stories or different things like that, and the rags to riches stories of how people, they're just, you're a human being and so are they. The only difference is that they figured out how to have the mindset necessary for success. So just the simply put is just right when you wake up in the morning, try to tell yourself that you're the best version of you, and that you don't need any of these negative naysayers around, because that's where I was. I used to wake up and be like, you're a piece of shit, you're this, that, you're other, you're not worthy, you're blah, blah, blah. It's changing that mindset and knowing you're here for a reason. And then
one of the things that you said was really profound. It was under the category of self-reflection. And then you were talking about itemizing things you're good at, things you're bad at. Self-reflection is the most powerful spiritual tool for me that I think is the most underrated and under talked about subjects.
Most people can't name one thing that they're good at. I do that with some of my family members. I was like, okay, name 3 things that you don't like about yourself. Yeah. And they will give you 15,000 in 2 seconds. What do you like about yourself? And they have to think too hard about it. There's nothing. Oh, I like my shoes. That's not you.
I like my shoe collection.
Yeah, I like my laugh.
My Jordans.
It's like, okay, that's a start.
Yeah,
but, that's not like a.
So, and I think that's what we're pointing to, right? Is if you're able to self-reflect and you're able to be which literally means you're bringing it to 100% with yourself. It doesn't mean that you need a psychologist. It doesn't need that you need a mentor. It doesn't mean that you need some external or outside resource. It literally is a practice with yourself. So if you were to outline everything that you're doing in your life, let's say you have this goal of becoming a world-renowned producer or whatever it is. It can be big or little. then you're able to self-reflect and say, based off my behavior today, if I write out down every behavior I have, negative and positive, what's my time suck? What is adding to this goal? And you're being honest and you're to tally it up. What can you change in there? You've got to be able to reflect on who you are today and then see the behavior that you need to change and then make a conscious commitment and write down, like, I'm going to change this habit. Like, it's even hard for me to articulate how profound what I just said was.
Journaling, man.
Journaling
Even at
in
the end of
general.
the night, like, or in the morning.
Ask yourself this question, right? And I think you're going to agree with this. I don't care how many books you've read. I don't care how many documentaries or Netflix, whatever series that you watched on betterment. What I care about is how many habits and behaviors did you extrapolate from that? And then did you implement in your daily life? Because if you aren't picking up a new habit or behavior that's advantageous for success in your mindset and your body and your relationships and just all aspects of your life, you are essentially wasting your time. It takes about 66 days on average to pick up a new habit. So that means you could pick up 6 new behaviors or habits that you didn't have in 2022.
And it's so easy to pick up a bad habit over a good one.
Right. Or you could pick up more bad habits
Yeah.
and then you're going down the staircase, right? So instead of going up, you're going down. So it's like that self-reflection tool, man, if you can get honest with yourself. And then if you have the people around you that can even amplify that even further, so powerful, bro.
I had a friend reach out yesterday because one of the restaurants I used to work at, and he was one of my roommates. He was like, "Hey, I'm in Orem and I'm at this restaurant. Like, how are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good." He was like, "Oh, we should go grab a beer or something." I'm like, "I don't drink. I don't." He's like, "Oh, we don't have to drink or whatever." But and I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man," I don't even drink caffeine anymore. And he was like, "Man, that's awesome." Like, no, he was like, "Oh, do you like smoke still, weed or anything?" I'm like, "Nothing." Why are you doing this? And I said, and this is loosely what I said through text message. I was like, I've been on a journey the last 5 years, especially to develop the best version of myself. And there's no substance, there's no vices, and there's no negative environmental factors that can get in my way now. So to be the best version of myself, all of those things had to change. So I don't need vices, crutches. Okay. So like, say, even for me, I don't even wear headphones at the gym anymore because when they would die, I couldn't focus. So anything like that that's going to limit or not be a catalyst for my growth, anything that's going to be like an anchor to hold me underwater and I can't breathe and I'm trying to get out and I'm trying to experience that air, like get above water. I can't have that in my life.
Okay, so now we're about 22 years old. And you're talking about getting that experience, and then you start deep diving these different topics. So if briefly for the person listening, coaching is so nuanced and specific and personalized, but are there any generalities of things you can share that have worked for the majority of people?
Yes. Some of the biggest things are going to be sleep, taking out processed foods, and creating a routine that's sustainable for you. Water, less processed foods, and we want to be able to sleep more. Make sure you're just putting in the necessary habits to be able to do the thing. Like, because I have so many people that are scared to even go to the gym that I know. And I'm like, just go. Just even show up, even if you don't go in. Like, just the biggest thing is taking action. And I would walk around the block, walk down the street even. Just do something that's going to be able to get your blood pumping and get you in the necessary way to get you off the couch, out of the mindset, get into the sun, to take action and to get moving. And even if it is, just turning on the YouTube video to do a yoga class, it's having the faith in you being able to motivate yourself to do something.
I know you've mentioned you've trained professional athletes, you've trained, the career-oriented individual that wants to get in better shape. What would you say are the major differences in mindset that you see with that camp versus that camp?
There's actually a lot of similarities. First, I'll test their psychology a little bit, and then it'll be an assessment on their body and see what's not firing properly and what's firing properly. And then I'll start for maybe even like a body weight program and then work from there. To see how they respond, how their body responds, things like that. And then so for a pro athlete, especially if they're sport specific, I'm going to look for imbalances in the person that are going to impede movement patterns necessary to keep them away from injury, but also see, like, say if they have an injury, see why that's happening, and then basically dissect the athlete and see where their muscle imbalances are. So say if somebody has a hamstring issue, and there's something going on to where they don't activate their hip flexor properly, and they're not striking their foot properly, and that's what's causing their hamstring to blow out. So for the everyday person, I'm building a foundation and a routine so they can develop and at their own pace. So if they don't respond well to criticism or different things like that, then I ease in. I candy coat it, just a little bit. I'm not going to let them feed into their own bullshit, but I just need to make it enough to where they can utilize it and run with it. But somebody that has spent their whole life listening to coaches, I will try to find a blend of a similar where I'm trying to meet them on the level that they understand and respect, but also not let them go in, because unfortunately a lot of pro athletes, they tend to be teenagers, like they act like that sometimes because
Oh,
they've been
gotcha.
taught so much or have been like coached so much that some of them can they like to push back,
So is there like a pattern of
yeah.
imbalances that you see with pro athletes?
Yeah.
Like, is it hip flexor, foot issues? Is it
It's so I spent some time with a myofascial release. The imbalances are sport specific, so they have overcompensations in certain areas. So, like, say if it's somebody that does a lot of running, and it's not like say if it's sprinting, they could have overdeveloped glutes, underdeveloped hip flexors, a lot of like the tie-in muscles for their calves and different aspects of their Achilles tendons, stuff like that, are going to be too tight. So for them, it's making sure that they're more pliable and they understand how to like activate their diaphragm and do different things so they can get themselves out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. And then as for the everyday person, it's learning how to activate those muscles. And for, like I said, for the pro, it's to make sure that we can shut off some of those muscles.
so one is too tense,
Yeah.
contractive,
So
and the other one is too relaxed.
exactly. So sometimes, especially with pro athletes, they do the same thing over and over again. So their muscle imbalances sometimes are harder to see where they are because they're so dominant in certain aspects. Like a lot of them will have rolled shoulders, and you have to work on external rotation. And then there's like little muscles that they don't activate properly, like the serratus or like different parts of your shoulder. They're very front shoulder dominant, rather than working on the lateral shoulder head, or the suprainfraspinatus can be too tight for boxers and different things like that. So it just depends. So like whatever they're doing, sport specific, I honestly like to do the opposite. I'll have them do pull movements if they're doing a lot of pushing or throwing. I'll have them doing like a lot of like row style movements if they're always overhead, or like, so your body runs ebbs and flows just like life. So whatever you push, you need to pull as well. So with the contralateral movements and different things like that, if somebody's just left, right, front, and back, I'm going to have them move at angles.
What's contralateral movement?
Things running contralaterally or anything like that, it's going to be like X patterns. So if you think of or like muscles and certain things in your body, to make it easy, so you have left, right, you have forward, backwards, right, and left. So your body has a lot of tendons, ligaments, and it's not just up and down, left and right. So our body's supposed to move in spirals. So it's supposed to twist and turn. And a lot of people, when they work out, they don't twist and turn properly, or they twist and turn one direction. It's being able to or break the barriers for like the tightness in their body.
What could you share with the person who has a desk job? What can they do differently in their job, in their life, that maybe a little tweak here, a little tweak there, that would enhance their overall well-being? Because most jobs now are computer jobs. You're on your computer 8 hours a day.
I mean, it's kind of hard to track where your tightness is, but being able to, some of the things I would say to try to utilize, I mean, at work, get up, be able to walk around, come back. What is that? It's the 80-20 or the 60-40 rule. There's a bunch of different, like, depending on which theory you're looking at. Basically, you spend X amount of time at the desk, and then so for every hour or 2 hours you spend at your desk, you spend 10 minutes of moving around a little bit. So if it depends where to your body's feeling it, but I would say more people need to sit in a squat without a chair. Some sort of quadruped position is beneficial, like crawling or something like that, and hanging. like being able to hold on to something or being able to elongate your spine in some way or another to where you can make sure that you're getting stretched out. So like even a huge one I would think for people that sit down a lot is lay your back down and have your feet elevated so it can help recirculate the blood. I've seen it big in the Eastern culture. There's a lot that ties into that. I forget the actual name that they call it. I've seen it from like an old school yogi. So basically, you lay down, you put your feet up against the wall. It helps recirculate your blood, and it's supposed to help with your chi.
Yeah. So
Um,
every recommendation you just had, how much time? How many times a day?
As for squatting, depending on if you have pain or not, you could do 15, 20 seconds. Just try that.
You're talking about a third world squat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Like, or what they call is ass to grass. Get as
Ass to
close
grass.
as you can. Another way to do that is maybe hold on to something, whether it's like a post or just something so you can have a little leverage so it's not so hard on your ankles, your knees, or your hips. And then as for hanging, you could have your toes on something. You just reach up and touch like even the door frame and just kind of hang from the door frame as long as your door supports it. There's that little molding, something like that. Or you can lay like even hip hinge, basically hinge at your hips downward and have your arms straight, and you can stretch out your arms, and that can alleviate tension on your spine. And then a quadruped position is being on all fours in some aspect. So you're basically on your hands and knees, and you can just work on being able to crawl around a little bit. If more people just crawled and literally just crawled like you were a kid and just worked from there, you'd see a lot more functionality out of your back and your hips and your knees, because most people don't bend their knee even 90 degrees anymore.
So I saw a guy on social media, and he was doing like a month, like every day for 30 days, where he would crawl on his, he would do a bear crawl for like 2 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And the changes that he had, the before and afters, were phenomenal. His forearm strength, his shoulder, just like everything was more filled. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I would say easiest thing, set a timer for like 15 to 30 seconds and just try each. Just very simple. Even if it's only 5 seconds. If you can sit in a squat for 5 seconds, that's 5 seconds per day longer than you ever have. And then you'll be able to start growing that into minutes. And it's so hard to like pick a specific time or a specific type of movement because there's so many people out there. But squatting, crawling, some sort of climbing or hanging, those are all beneficial. All things that you used to do when you were a kid, and most people need to get back to that. So you'll have more functionality for your body.
And an added benefit, a byproduct of doing these things, if you haven't gotten over your self-consciousness and worried about what other people think about you, you're going to be doing movements outside of the general frame of what 10 to 14 movements that everybody does at the gym.
Yeah.
It's like on average, the average gym goer does 10 to like 12 movements. You might feel obscure, you might feel different, but again, you're going to practice that great skill set of not caring what other people think about you, because this is about you and your health. This isn't about what other people think.
Exactly.
That is normal. This is you trying different things. In general, man, we've got to take care of this vessel we have, right? Because this is the lens of perception in which we experience this world. And the more stiff you are, the more hurt and injured you are, that's also going to reflect your mindset. So we'll go more into that. If you like those quick tips, those recommendations, Justin, again, is on Wellness Wednesdays, or you could follow him on social media, Jomfit, JOMFIIIT, or the Elevated Jedi. And he goes over all that. And again, we're asking him these things, and we're getting into wellness with Justin because he's a practitioner. So go follow him. You'll see his 66-inch box jump, his 450 deadlift, strength, the limberness, the gymnastic skills, he's a well-rounded, a very multifaceted, multi-versatile human. So
and that's the culture we have, is the guy that can bench press 315 for reps but can't do one pull-up.
Exactly. And that's why I've done so many different things athletically, because I've seen that. I'm like, I don't care if you can bench press 405 pounds, like you can't even squat 405 pounds.
Train like a monkey.
Yeah,
because we are a direct lineage.
We're
depending on who you ask.
We're primal people. Talked a little bit about your past. We've highlighted a little bit of your strengths. One of the things that I'm trying to normalize is men being vulnerable, men talking about things they struggle with, and not just highlighting the benefits, because the statistics are staggering, man. They're very scary. How many teenage boys commit suicide? How many men are in a very deep, dark hole?
Did you
And
see the new studies that came out? And that's actually one of the Wednesday clips I'd like to do is how men's friends have been decreasing.
yeah.
Like the communities are getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and that's another one. I mean, that's one that I wanted to talk about with my last guest that came on, which was, it's weird to make friends after 30. Like, it just feels weird to make friends. So I would consider you a friend. One of the things though that we focus a lot of energy in our business and our entrepreneurial endeavors. Side of that though, that's pretty much true for all of my male friendships. It's like, if you're gonna be in my circle, it's like we're building shit, we're growing shit, we're getting better. People might see you, your physique, your life, your experience, your knowledge, and think, you're perfect. Your life is fucking perfect, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say for that, I think everybody battles some form of either comparing to others or trying to be the best or there's whether it's self-doubt or like that comparing and like that weird contrast that people have with everything and everybody. uh for me, one of the things that I've struggled with is always trying to get to that carrot, and then when I get there it's not enough. So like one of the biggest things is celebrate your small wins. I didn't do that enough, and now looking back I wish I would. So celebrate your small wins, and I feel like that'll help propel you to be more successful. Like don't get complacent, but being able to move forward, and don't move forward too fast. Like enjoy bits and pieces of what you're doing if you can, because you never know how much time you have. If you're always hustling or grinding and doing all these things, but then you don't spend time with family and a car accident happens and you're gone, like what happens then? Are you going to be worried about, being able to do all these things, and then never like kind of chilling and just sitting back and thinking, wow, like I did this stuff, or whatever it may be.
So is that something that you struggled with?
Yeah, I still
Celebrating
do.
the small
I
ones?
still
Yeah.
do. Is celebrating the small wins and not trying to. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need a long view, and that was something I struggled with too. I didn't have a long view. I wouldn't put things together properly, and I wouldn't be structured enough to or think I was able to achieve this next thing. So for me, it is like I still battle with self-talk here and there when I wake up in the morning, and I joke around about it at the gym or jujitsu or whatever. And people are like, man, like you're always, you're in here early. Like, that's cool. Like, like it must be grateful. And I was like, that's the problem, is a lot of the mornings I'm not. And I have to battle my demons early on. I have to earn my gratitude throughout the day. And I have to be able to stack those wins early so those negative demons don't come into the back of my head and give me these ideas. Because for me, I've struggled since I was 4 with depression. And I didn't know it was depression. I had no clue. I thought that's how everybody just felt.
People who are listening who are also in a similar place where they have, for a large portion of their life, they've battled with depression or of that nature, right? What's helped you?
Yeah. So for me, it's been like we've been talking about the hero's journey. Who is it that you need to become to live this life? But at the same time, that can be a double-edged sword, because I'm trying to create this person, but I'm not like some days I feel like I don't necessarily accept the person I am that day. Like I'm trying so hard to be this other person, like trying to be the Joe Rogan or trying, like even for you, I'm like, oh, well, would Josh do this? Like this, that, and the other, like
what would Josh do?
Exactly. But it is that thing where like you have to find balance just in the center of you, and like you have to stack small wins. That's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people are depressed. For one, it's these nicotine pens and all these substances and stuff like that, but that's hard. But you have to have a day one, and your day one's today. You have to start now, and you have to just do these little things, even if it's baby steps to get to where you're going. Whether it's drinking the 1 cup of water or, putting down the nicotine pen for an hour rather than hitting it all day, giving yourself a measured amount of time, or restricting and creating discipline. But then again, too, I've had times where I'm too disciplined, and then that can weigh heavy on my mental state too. It's just finding that silver lining in your everyday life and doing, maybe it's just enough to make it to tomorrow. But it's being able to find and dig through your brain and just be able to find that one good thing that that you did that day. If it's that bad, because I've had those days. And just know, like, hey, if I can just survive till tomorrow, then it's another day for me, depending on how depressed you are. Yeah. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just really try to sit down and think, if I could have a wish and I could be whoever I wanted to be that day, or like I can turn into that person, who would it be? Like you said, write it down. Who's that person? Who's that number one person you admire? Write that down, and what's the one thing I could do today to make today successful for myself? Whether it's walk to the end of the block, get out of bed. Some people I hear they can't even get out of bed because they're so depressed. It's get up, go drink that glass of water, go walk around the block, and maybe make a healthy meal for yourself. It's just dissecting all those bad things, but just know you have to take it one day at a time because that's all we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful. It's when I hear you say that, I'm just reminded about how environment plays such a big role, and I think back to a study, it's the rat park study. There was two groups of rats. One rat that was given cocaine as a dispensary, like they would press a button, they would get cocaine or heroin or some hard drug, right? That's quote unquote addictive. And they would have access to that free reign. And in one of the group studies, they had this very synthetic environment, hard edges, white, sterile. The other group of rats was in their natural environment, nature everywhere, outdoors, everything. The group became addicted to the substance to where they would do it until they died. The rats would kill themselves. The group of rats that was in their natural environment didn't even touch the substance, chose every time not to even use it. They knew it was there, they just didn't use it because they were in a more natural environment. So I think to that study in the human context, the environment we live in isn't conducive to health, wellness, and optimizing mindset and emotions and relationships. It's not. It's capitalism, right? It's here to maximize profit. The bottom dollar is the only thing that this environment encompasses. You hear that concept like in the Matrix, or we're a cog in the machine. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about mental health or depression or sadness or these emotional states that are quite literally connected and indicative to, like, that's you telling yourself that you are not happy with what's going on, whether that's how you're eating, how you're moving, what your relationships you have or lack of relationships, the month, like everything, right? So if, like, I created a post a while ago where I was like, if you're not moving your body, if you're not strength training, if you're not drinking clean water, if you're not eating organic whole foods, if you're not spending quality time with your family daily, and you don't have these natural scripts, essentially, then you're not even giving yourself a chance. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To avoid sadness or these depressive bouts. And most people aren't doing that.
Not at all.
Like not even close.
No.
Like if you do those things, you're going to give yourself a fighting chance. Like nothing I told you was say, buy this pharmaceutical drug. Nothing I told you was cost you thousands of dollars to be told at a fucking retreat center. Like
there's another exercise I like too. It's simple. It's say you woke up in the morning and imagine you are dropped into this vessel or this body. And what you do is you sit and you look, you see everything going on. You know what's going on because it's you, but you're like, if I was dropped in this body today, what would I do to change the problems? Like what could, if I was starting from right now and I don't remember any of my past experiences, what could I do right now if I didn't have all the gray noise behind me and I'm a new person in this body right now and I could fix it all? How would I start? Start right there. Like I was like, same with companies or whatever. If you have a lot of things going wrong with the company, you're like, hey, I just bought this company today. How do I fix it? Instead of worrying about all the, the problems that you had, or the not turning on the camera for this or that or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's a great little mind shift and little perspective shift. And I can tell you from being coached by some of the, the top mindset coaches, it's never this thing where you sit down and it's like this gold nugget that just drops from fucking heaven.
You shoot a lightning bolt at your head.
That. Holy shit, I'm gonna change my life. Strap you to a machine that just changes your fucking bioelectric matter. Like it's literally like, what did you do when you felt your best? Exactly. Self-reflect. Oh, okay. I was doing this every morning. I did this. I went to this workout. I did this. And then, are you doing that now? No. Okay, then start fucking doing that again.
Right. And then you have to be vulnerable with those people because you go in there with this rigid shell, and they were like, "You're lying to me." You're not telling me then, oh, you're perfect. Then why are you here?
Yeah. And that truism exists everywhere. That truism is like, when you go to therapy, it's not because they have this profound knowledge. It's because you build a relationship with somebody that you finally drop your walls, you get authentic, you get vulnerable, and you're like, hey, these are my weaknesses. This is where I'm at. And they're like, okay, now that I can see where you're at, maybe try this. This will help
And
you.
that's why you have to like look at our ancestors and everybody before us. You have to live a hard life to have easy times. You can't have consistent easy times. You're gonna have a hard life. You know, you have to make sure that you need trials and tribulations. Like if all of your ancestors were such victims, you would never be here.
Yeah. The best way I've heard that posed is choose your hard. You're gonna have death. That's a part of the human experience. You're gonna have heartbreak. That's a part of the human experience. You're gonna have loss. You're gonna have failure. You're gonna have a lot of failure. That's gonna happen whether you choose it or not. But if you wake up and you choose an ice bath and you choose your hard, it's gonna put you in an environment that's so fucking stressful that you're going to start training how to self-regulate yourself. It'll be complementary to the trials that you're going to experience and the hard that's going to come your way, whether you choose or not.
And know yourself well enough. If you know you're going to be lazy and you have time, go to the gym at the first thing in the morning. Do the dish instead of letting it pile up in the sink. You know, make sure that you know yourself well enough to be able to do the thing necessary to get you to the next level. You know, so don't let the laziness pile up. Do whatever it is necessary to get you to that next step. Like whether it's the dish or keeping your gym shoes at the door, so you know as soon as you get home from work, right? Or keep them in your car. Go right to the gym. So whatever little, or if you know you're in between washing the dishes and going upstairs, sometimes you sit down on your phone. This is from personal experience. And next thing you know, you're 15 minutes on to whatever it is. Don't do that. Leave your phone somewhere and go get all those things done, and then treat yourself to the 5 minutes of cell phone time or whatever, you know. You know yourself well enough to be able to create discipline necessary and be honest with yourself. Too many people aren't.
Yeah. That's more important than anything. You have to practice that self honesty, that being 100% real with yourself.
When you look somebody in the eyes and you're talking seriously to them, you see them look down, or you can see them folding, and you're like, you didn't do the thing, huh? That you just said you did. That's real.
And even if you don't have anybody like Justin to be able to read your nonverbal cues and tell you, like, come on, bro, like call you out, do that to yourself.
Yeah. The number one thing that's always going to get in your way is you. Whether it is an outside, like there are circumstances that change, but it's your mindset that has to adapt to be able to overcome these roadblocks. No matter what, you can point the finger in every direction, but it has to start with you. You have to be able to do whatever it is necessary for your success. No one's going to hand it to you. At the end of the day, it's you. You can have your family, you can have your kids, you can have everybody, you can have the best environment. But if you're not there for yourself, no one else can be either.
How do people get that radical accountability and responsibility?
Through hard work and discipline. You got to, like I said, you got to start right now. You got to start today. You got to start doing the things necessary, and you have to use those negative thoughts and some of those negative ideas toward yourself as a guideline or a roadmap and a compass to understand why do I feel like this about myself? Yes, there's childhood trauma and different things, but at the end of the day, we have these anxieties and we have these negative narratives on ourselves and other things because we know we're not doing most of us, I should say, because we're not doing these things necessary to positive habit stack and to create the best version of ourselves. So use that as a roadmap and, be accountable.
I couldn't said it better myself. Justin, where can people find you?
You can find me at The Elevated Jedi on Instagram. My fitness Instagram is JOMFIIIT. And on TikTok, it's JOMFIIT as well. 3 eyes.
So I sent you a text message about the content strategy. Are you going to implement that?
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Video?
Yeah, definitely.
That was good.
I got 2 finger push-up videos waiting for it. I don't know if you've seen those ones.
No, yeah, that's dope. That's gonna be dope. So yeah, go check out Justin. If you feel compelled, also reach out to him. He does one-on-one coaching. He's not cheap though. He's worth his weight in gold. And so if you're committed to growth, if you're committed to excellence, get ready to deal with somebody who's in top of his game, but also a practitioner, and also somebody that's going to be in your corner to champion whatever goal you have, health, wellness related, and beyond. So thanks again, Wolfpack. If you have any questions, also, I just want to make this do this quick call out for the community. If you guys have any questions on health and wellness related, anything more specific you guys want to know or learn from, as Justin is the host, he would love to hear those, and we want to start engaging with our community directly instead of curating these random bits of information, which are still valuable. But again, if you have a question, email admin@adaptivealphas.com. You can DM both of us. Are your DMs open?
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? I'm here to help the world.
There you go. DMs are open. So we appreciate you. As always, if we brought you any value today, like, subscribe, and share this episode. Please help us grow the audience a little bit more by rate and reviewing the podcast on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all of them. What is that other radio one? No, it's the radio. iHeartRadio.
Yeah, they have podcasts on there.
Yeah, we're on there too. Probably not a demographic, but regardless, we're there.
Let's accept this again.
Peace.
Later, guys.